Hi everyone, how's it going? I know like 1/3 of you like for real, like real friends, or we've worked together or something like that. I was promised I wouldn't need to like talk about myself ad nauseum, and with knowing at least 1/3 of y'all, I hope I could just do a quick thing. So I've been in Nashville for, it'll be 19 years in September. Sort of half that time was spent as a technologist. I worked for that guy in the corner over there. Raise your hand. Thank you, sir. And then, inspired by him and his partner, went off on my own and started my path as an entrepreneur. And I've been learning by doing pretty much since 2007, so almost 12 years into that process. Current projects are Nashville Soccer Club. You guys know what that is, hopefully. And founding partner, Jumpstart Foundry, and CEO of Health Further. That's my healthcare business, venture capital, and industry engagement. Other than that, I have a newsletter. You can sign up for it at marcuswhitney.com. I write every Monday. And then I do a podcast. We're recording this session. Say hi to Dez. And that's about it. Cool. Let's talk. Huh? I have a book coming out. Yes. Clint's in the book. It's called Create and Orchestrate. Took me 3.5 years to get the first draft done, but I really like it. It's really good. And I'm doing book layout and a final edit of that right now. Hey, Mike.
Marcus, your LinkedIn picture threw me off. Is this how you normally dress, or is this how you normally dress?
So day to day, I'm dressed like this. I do clean up well, though. So I don't mind wearing a suit. I'll rock a suit every now and then.
When did you first know that you wanted to start your own company?
So my first my first attempt at starting a company was actually right before I got hired by Clint. I got hired as a contractor there and then transitioned into an employee. And it was really just because I didn't like the environments I was working in very much, and that was as much to do with me as those environments. Although I really did like working for Clint. I really did like working at Emma. Yeah, it was just me having very, very strong opinions about how I spent my time, how organizations were being run or being led, and then eventually just realizing the real issue was I needed to go out and do things my way. You know what I mean? It's like I was never going to find a place that was doing it the way I wanted it done. And then, I quickly learned how hard it is to actually, accomplish that. But I've been much happier in pursuit of that on my own than, in somebody else's environment complaining about it all the time. So I guess the first time would have been 2003. I was a programmer at an agency called Anode, and I actually had like a ton of freedom there. I got to work on 4 or 5 different projects at a time. I got to learn a bunch of different programming languages. It was actually fine for me. My relationship, my boss was this guy Chris Lee. I actually got along with him quite well. But I just had strong opinions and decided I wanted to leave. I knew absolutely nothing about how to run a business. I write about that in the book. I totally screwed up the first pass at it. And then learned, I have a lot to learn, and so I thought it was a good idea for me to just, work on the technology thing. I didn't know, when I got hired at them, I didn't know that my role there was going to end up where it ended up. I started as a programmer, kind of under another guy who's a friend of mine, this guy named Jackson. I started under him. And then kind of within a period of months, Jackson moved on. He's an entrepreneur as well. He runs a bunch of Plato's Closets here in town and also has a technology company. And so I was in the position of like the sole programmer of a team of 6 of us at the time, probably, right? And then, once we got through sort of a rough patch and we started like hiring people, naturally people fell under me, but I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, and so a department developed under me, and so I ended up being in a leadership position, which put me as the leader of technology in the organization. So having cross-functional leadership conversations, which gave me more of a view into the entire business. But like when I started, I didn't understand that I was going to get an education in business from the technology leadership seat. Does that make sense? So that ended up being a really great experience for me because I got to learn a lot. You still don't learn everything until you're the person in the seat. You know what I'm saying? You can see a lot, but until you're actually the CEO, it's not the same. But I did learn a lot from that opportunity. Yes.
So you mentioned the screw ups. Can you tell us about some of those, or that all in the book, or?
No, I mean I'm happy. So, I mean I've made. I mean, I struggle to think of a mistake I haven't made. But like,
Biggest ones.
big. So really, really big ones were, really, really big ones. So I just wrote a newsletter about that went out on Monday about leverage. And so the basis of it is in just about every situation, you know, whether you realize it or not, if you're dealing with another person or another organization, there's always an underlying negotiation sort of in play. And when you don't have your principles really, really firm, and you don't really understand what is the most important thing for you, you can very, very quickly give up leverage and just not even know you're doing it until it's over. And so one of the really big mistakes I made was when I left Emma, it was just me, and just a little bit of background for context. I left Emma, and then within like 30, 45 days, my marriage, like I didn't even know this was going to happen, but my marriage kind of, you know, quickly headed into separation and eventually divorce. And so when I left, it was a great situation because I had some ownership and sold that back to the company. And so I had some money with which to launch the company, but then I ended up having to take that money and pay alimony with it. And I wasn't expecting that. And also all the emotional shit from a divorce that just like throws you, you know, for a loop. And so I think I can say in my defense, I probably wasn't thinking that clearly, but it was a consultancy that was around technology for startups, and I got a couple of clients. One where I think I had a really healthy relationship. You know, I was able to push back on the client, and the other one where they kept getting funding, and so it kept growing my revenue, and so I kept growing, and like I wasn't paying attention to the fact that they went from being 20% of my revenue to like 70% of my revenue, and I got way over leveraged in terms of the number of employees I had that were dedicated to that, and I never emotionally got okay with the idea that if I get sideways with them, I may have to lay off all these people. Like I never really ran through that scenario, and when it came, I basically, because I wasn't willing to do that, I basically folded my company into, like I got sucked into that company and ended up being its CTO and parlaying my entrepreneurial, you know, journey for 4 years. Yeah, and from 2010 until 2014. So that was like a really big mistake. You know what I mean? Making the mistake of thinking that I was like running $1 million company when really like I was a department of someone else's company. You know what I mean? Yeah. As a subcontractor. I wasn't tracking. You know, so that was a pretty big one.
Have you ever had to pivot from a target market or business model? And how long did it take you to make that decision?
Yeah.
And then how long should it have taken you to make that decision?
I just did it. So Lauren helped me. I ran an event here for 4 years. It was the largest healthcare innovation event really in the region. So we had about 1,800 people that were registered for the event, and let's say 1,500 actually would walk through our doors. We had HCA as the primary sponsor. It was 3 days. We had senior leaders of multi-billion-dollar organizations that we connected for the very first time. But it took an entire year's worth of energy to do. And when we started it, the reason why we started it was when my partner Vic and I, in 2014, decided we wanted to do our investment business full time. When we were evaluating things, one of the decisions we made was we wanted to move into healthcare only because we needed to leverage some strengths, and it wasn't going to be capital. Just for background in the venture capital space, like 75% of all venture capital by concentration in terms of amount of capital, right, is in 3 places. It's in San Francisco, New York, and Boston. And, maybe you can add LA as a 4th now, but really it's concentrated in those 3 places. And so the rest of the country divvies up the remaining 25%. And so there's not a lot of capital in Tennessee, not a lot of capital in Nashville from a venture capital perspective. So we were never going to be able to attract the best deals from around the country on the premise of capital because we didn't have access to it. And so we were like, what's going to be our differentiator? I'm going to get there. What's going to be our differentiator? And we said healthcare because there's a cluster here for healthcare. The only problem was my previous 14 years of experience was in marketing technology. It was not in healthcare. I spent 1 year as a programmer at HealthStream. I didn't know healthcare at all. And so, but one thing I did understand from all the marketing technology time was brand. I knew brand. And so I was like, okay, let's create an event called Health Further because there's a hole in the market because nobody in the healthcare space here really gets brand very well. So, and they're leaving this opportunity on the table. So let's take that opportunity. Let's just come in. We'll throw the innovation gathering. And the very first year, we held it at the Omni, sold out, 650 people, very, very successful. Everyone came. So then the next year, I went to go back to the Omni, and so just for timing perspective, the first year we threw it was 2015. So if you're thinking about all the cranes that are going up in town and everything like that, but there weren't a lot of hotels yet, right? Like just in the last 12 years, we've had I don't know how many hotel rooms go live, probably like 1,500, right? But the Omni was like kind of the only game in town, and so that also meant it was one of the only meeting rooms in town. So when I went to go rebook the Omni for 2016, there was no availability in 2016. So I had to bump it up to the Music City Center. Literally, it was the only real option that we had. So you're going from like filling a space with 650 people to going to like this cavernous thing that you can't fill with 100,000 people. So by necessity, we sort of were like, okay, well, let's make it bigger. You know what I mean? And so we did. Over the course of like 3-4 years, we made it bigger. This was good because by last year's event, we had delegations from the Netherlands, the UK, Israel, China, ambassador from Northern Ireland. Half of our attendees came from outside of the state of Tennessee. So we legitimately, over the course of 4 years, through this brand, like really, really built our network to where I was able to sit on stage and have a conversation with the CEO of HCA. And it was like super credible. You know what I'm saying? Whereas 5 years ago, they were like, who? Seriously, you're not relevant, right? So I was able to do that through the brand and through the event. But now it's like we were looking at, so now here's the reason why. Okay, 2 reasons. One, it was really taxing. It's just a reality. It was really, really taxing to like throw an event at that level. And from a timing perspective, we were looking at the healthcare industry, and when we started, convening was probably like the very best thing we could do because there just wasn't a lot of change happening in healthcare. And so like pulling everybody together for like an event one time a year was like probably like pretty cool. Last year in the healthcare industry, things changed like dramatically. Amazon hired a CEO to lead their healthcare initiative. Google hired a CEO to lead their healthcare initiative. Tons of mergers happened. Tons of leadership changes happened. And that's our business. Our business is change is happening in the healthcare industry. And so what we realized was we had a convergence of a couple of things. One, we were credible now. We weren't credible 4 years ago when convening was the thing we needed to do. We no longer needed to do it. It was a want to do, not a need to do. Second of all, time was accelerating. Things were compressing. The market timing for our opportunity was like getting much more real. And so we had to say, okay, we don't have to do this. Now it's a nice to do, not a must do. the market is accelerating in our favor, and we have to make the best use of our assets. And the number one asset, quite frankly, is me. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, I need to be spending my time working on building relationships with CEOs. It literally is what I was doing before I got over here. Is why I'm a little bit late, because I had a great meeting with the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization. Hopefully, some wood around here. You know, we'll lock that in. But we've pivoted. We've been in this new model for 120 days. Already signed the first client. Like 3 more probably going to be signed here in the next 90 days. 2 of which are international in the UK. And it's we've already the revenue is going to be doubled on a much smaller labor base, and the meaning and the strategic value to our organization is we couldn't have accomplished it when we started, but now it's what we need. You know what I'm saying? I need these relationships because I've got this portfolio of companies. I need to learn better. How to fine-tune our investment thesis. You know what I mean? We went from having $2 million under management in 2014 to now we've got 35. We just closed our first $21 million fund in December. So, it's always looking at everything and reevaluating everything and understanding you don't do something just because you did it before. You know what I mean? What's the best thing for you to do for the organization and for you personally too? You know what I mean? Because that's all got to factor in. So I mean, the answer is I'm in the middle of a pivot right now. You know?
You should have done it earlier.
Huh?
You think you should have pivoted sooner?
No. This last festival was critical. What we accomplished in August was the game changer. It was the game changer. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have the conversation with Milton Johnson on stage in 17. I had it in 18, But there have been pivots that I should have made earlier that I failed to do, that I didn't do it until it was too late. That's happened before. The company that I got sucked into, it's called Moontoast. It was a social marketing platform. Where we fucked up was we based the business entirely on Facebook. So we went from having like $3.5 million in revenue, and our clients were like Toyota, Lexus, P&G, Nissan. I mean, it was dope. And then Facebook made a change. It was like, phew, and I knew it was coming. You know what I mean? In hindsight, I knew it was coming, right? Now what I learned in the future is you never build your business based on someone else's business. You can build it based on an industry, but don't depend on someone else that can change a rule and kill all your revenue. If you can help it. Yes?
So I'm in the process of building a team for the first time.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you could speak to any lessons learned on the process of going from 1 person to 10, the very early stage hires in the team.
Yeah. So I've actually got real tactical stuff on this side. So one really, really tough thing is resist the urge to give somebody too much authority too soon because you want to hand off a whole bucket of stuff. 2, figure out some personality testing model, I don't care what you do, and actually use it. Because they're better than your gut. What I mean by that is it'll reinforce your gut and it'll plus some, right? 3, background checks. They're cheap. Yes.
What was the question?
Has she been surprised by a background check? So yes, background checks. Understand that your job is about to dramatically change. Maintain your authority. Don't wait too long to figure out core values, because they help guide everything. Talk to a lawyer about HR. Get an HR system in place. It's a good start.
Yeah. I think it's enough to start working on.
Yeah. And, I got one other thing. Be real with yourself in terms of what type of environment you want to work in terms of teams. Because you know what? There is no one right answer to this. Like, if you want to do a totally distributed team, that's totally fine. Like, Matt Mullenweg has built, Automatic, and everyone said it was, like, stupid that he was doing it totally distributed, and it's been great. You know what I mean? Like if you don't want to come into an office every day, just think about how you can design, or if being in an office is really, really important to you, then think about that environment. But, like, there's no one set of rules for this. It really is, if you're the leader, you're going to set the tone based on your energy, and it's got to work for you. It's just the truth. It's got to work for you, I will always feel like I'm a part of Emma, but I left after 4 years. Clint stuck around for a lot longer than that. You know what I mean? It had to work for him. You know what I mean? Like, it's about you. Be a little selfish. It's got to work for you. It's your deal. Yeah.
Hi, Marcus.
Hi, Andy.
I'm really excited that you're here because a lot of the Entrepreneur Center stuff is healthcare, tech, and music, and my business.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk a little bit about the soccer club.
Yeah.
And sort of like what is Nashville's appetite for outdoor recreation, and like how is I know a little bit about the story with the soccer club, but just any kind of insight you can give me around like that industry. I feel like I am starving for information about that.
Yeah. So I think generally Nashville is getting, as it grows, it's getting more diverse, and you're getting people that are moving here from the Midwest and the Northeast and the Northwest, and and so you're getting more diverse, folks here. I don't think anyone uses, certainly myself included, uses social media marketing, particularly advertising on Facebook or Instagram, nearly as much or as well as they should, because you can find these people, like that's how you find people now, and everyone is on there. They're lying if they say they're not. You know what I'm saying? Everyone is on there. Everyone is on this all the time. And if they're not on it, their significant other's on it, or their kid is on it, or like you can't escape it. And so I don't think anyone is doing enough there. I'm working on figuring out what that looks like by this, right? Like I'm working on building up the capacity to create enough content that I can then build advertising around to grow audience, to be able to drive any message I want. You know what I'm saying? So that like I can indirectly impact ticket sales at the soccer matches. You know what I'm saying? Like at no cost to the club. As an example, right? But I just think, and Annie, you have platform, right? You have Lightning 100, which then creates brand that you can then translate into social, and you're very transparent on social, which works, which is good, which you can then translate into wellness, which is being active, being outdoors. That's healthy, right? So how do you, right? You feel what I'm saying? how do you take all of those things that are naturally and authentically you and turn them into content that builds brand around you that then attracts people around what you're doing?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're like half a step away, right? It's practitionership, right? It's probably a year of real practitionership, like thinking about it, you know? Like we just put together the first draft of our content plan, like in this last week, right? We don't, like, you know, and already it's Tuesday, we haven't like executed Tuesday. We got Monday done, you know? Tuesday's not quite right. Our image size isn't quite right. We got to adjust our image size, right? So you know, it's trial and error, but I do, you know, but like I do want to say that because I was in the marketing side of things, you know, like I came into the programming stuff 2001, and what was happening during that time was people were using the web more regularly. We were starting to get broadband, Napster, Flash programming. I don't know how many of you remember Flash apps and websites. That was all what was happening. This was not a thing in 2001 or 2003 or 2005. It was 2007 when this started to hit. And he paid for me to go to South by Southwest. I went, I got a Twitter account, and Twitter was just SMS. And right then I already believed in digital marketing because I saw us selling tons of books or tickets or whatever on email. And then I saw Twitter and I was like, holy shit. But that was 2007, it's 2019. The speed with which it went from where it was to where it is now, all we've really been able to do is adopt to it as consumers. We haven't really been able to step back in the macro and say, how revolutionary is this for us as producers or business owners? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of it is because, oh, we're all on our phones all the time, or, oh, it's really hard, or, oh, I don't want to do it, I'm annoyed by it. Like, forgetting the fact that the world has completely changed in 10 years. Completely. You could not get your message out at all in this way 10 years ago. And now I can be like my own TV channel. Full stop, 100%, like with no limits to that. No limits. I can get on the big screen in all of your houses right now. Full stop, right? And so, like, yes, it's hard because you got to like operate your business and then you got to like figure out and learn all this different kind of stuff, you know. But the big brands aren't doing it yet. Like they're still not doing it. You know, they're still buying billboards and so like if you leaned into this like a 1,000,000%, you know, what would that do? What could that do? You know, how big could you become? And almost like really, like honestly, nobody in this room is doing it. No one's really doing it.
What does really doing it look like? Like creating your own YouTube channel and doing podcasts, or like what does that look like?
It looks like being on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, having a blog, having a podcast, putting out content every single day, and then running ads against that content every single day. And then probably also having an email list and a text messaging group system and a private Facebook group, and doing live broadcasts at some regular interval. It's probably all those things. Yeah, so then the question is how does one do that, right? How does one, because that's not simple. But like, that's the opportunity, and there's billions of people, and everyone is on this. So, you know, like I get the delta, I get the difficulty, but I'm also just trying to make the point that this was impossible 10 years ago. Right? Like that's how much things have changed, is that you can do that now. You can be in all those formats now, and you could not 10 years ago. The capabilities are there, right?
If an entrepreneur goes to an investor and okay, I need $400,000 and $55,000 of that is to produce this content that you're talking about, does an investor understand the value?
It's not the investor's job to just understand the value of that. It's the entrepreneur's job to show how there's going to be a return on that investment. So it's not my, because quite frankly, if you as an entrepreneur can't show me in the numbers, then I don't think you can do it. Like, you need to tell me how that's going to work, right? What are you going to do with $55,000?
Is that rhetorical?
Yeah, no, that's legitimate. That's like, what are you going to do with $55,000?
If it were me, it would be like, hey, I want to hire a content person. I want to hire.
Okay, how much are you going to spend on a content person?
$2,000 a month.
Okay, that's a good number, right, Des? Okay, what are you going to get? What are you going to get for $2,000? Let's see. What are we going to get?
And I have not thought about this in detail. Something that's on my mind, but I'm literally like playing around with whether that is the best. It is the best use of my time with where I am so early stage. So yeah, so it would be hire a content person to videos, photograph, maybe somebody.
Let me ask you a question. How do you think you're going to grow your business if you don't do that? Where is all the attention today?
So my challenge is that my customer doesn't use these platforms a lot right now.
Oh, okay.
Right now, they're just not.
Who's your customer?
So our customers are going to be agencies who provide some type of youth development service. That could be education, that could be work readiness, training.
Those agencies are not on Facebook and LinkedIn?
No,
They're not on Facebook?
no.
The people who run those agencies are not on
The
Facebook?
people that run those organizations are, yes, on that.
That's the agency. It's the people that run it. That's what is the agency, like a living, breathing thing without people?
You know, the people have their fan pages and somebody, I see what you're saying.
Everybody's on it.
Yeah, you're right.
Or their spouse or their kid is on it. Everyone's on it. I don't believe anyone when they say they can't get to their customers on it. It's just a complete lie. Everyone's on it. Everyone's on it.
Let's have been on the entrepreneur's side and the investor side. What do entrepreneurs misunderstand about investors?
Okay. One big thing they don't understand is that well, it depends on what you mean when you say an investor. If you're referring to me as a venture capitalist, a lot of times what they don't realize is that venture capital is a job. It's a job. It's like you run a bank and you have to make credit decisions. You know, and you have more margin of error than a bank would. So did you know a bank has to have 99.5% success return on loans? They can only have a 0.5% failure rate. So this is why you don't get loans. This is why, because none of you can in good faith say you have a 99.5% chance of returning money on your risky venture, right? Right? Okay, so this is why you don't get bank loans. So then you need to come to risk capital, which is venture capital. But it's a job, right? I've got a $21 million fund that I've got I've got a managing director and a partner that run. They have to look at deals. They have to come to the investment decision committee. We review the deals. We review the financials. And it has to fit within the criteria that we said we're going to invest in. And it has to be better than all the other deals that we're seeing in order for it to pass. So one of the big things is they don't understand the structure of it, that they're not investing their money, they're investing other people's money, and it's a job. And by the way, they only really get paid when it returns. That whole thing, that whole bit, entrepreneurs don't understand, right? So that's a big thing. And then on the angel side, angels are different. Angels have money, are doing it because they don't want to lose their money, but they're typically people who used to operate a business. They're not operating right now, but they're having fun. They like the idea of mentoring. It keeps them abreast of what's going on in the space. Blah 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 blah. They don't want to lose their money, but it's not the same. It's not a job. It's their prerogative to do it with their capital, which they're willing to put at risk. It's their decision, and ultimately, they have to make good calls, and they have to get good at it, right? It's their money. It's a little bit different.
So I don't know, this probably applies more to the venture capital space. So when I'm talking to venture capitalists or investors, prospective investors, I think sometimes they don't know a lot about
Your sector, yeah.
And so, but then they go talk to other investors. I actually don't think the other investors talk to them, which is fine. But I think I struggle with like how much should I like be in a banter back and forth versus like being a learner. And I think it's something I struggle with probably as a woman, as a person of color, trying to figure out what's the right role for me in terms of like trying to educate, or if is it like a back and forth, or what's the appropriate. I don't want to seem like
Yeah.
not like a learner. Like so, I'm like okay.
Can I ask you a qualifying question so that I don't make an assumption? What markets are you predominantly looking for capital in? Is it Nashville predominantly, or are you traveling?
It's been all over, yeah.
All over?
Yeah.
Okay, are you finding a different encounter when you're here versus other places?
Here, I think it's like, it depends on angel versus like, I feel like here, angel more open.
Angel more open, right? I mean, plus you've got brand, you've got network, so like you can get a respectful angel conversation going
I feel
here.
like in the Southeast, or when I'm having those conversations, they're like, people who are interested, they're like, I don't know the ed tech space, so I'm gonna go and talk to people who are,
Right.
Or they end up back in the Bay Area, talk to people who I think.
Yeah. I mean, look. I think all this stuff is tough. I think one thing I think that entrepreneurs don't understand is how many deals we see. I see so many deals. I see so many deals. Like, occasionally a really, really great deal does come along, but I see like really the leverage is on my side, just in terms of like who really needs who by volume of opportunity. It's in favor of the venture investor for sure. And then I do think that then parlays into the next thing, which is if it's because they see so many deals, if it's not if it doesn't check the major boxes of what they really feel strongly about or what they feel comfortable in, your chances are pretty low. You know what I mean? And that's not actually about you. Now, there are other things about implicit bias and just, women of color especially, right?
Don't you try to like go back and forth to say like, oh, thank you? And
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of got a general that I don't know that it applies to everyone, but it's a personality thing. I don't like to spend time trying to convince somebody. It's never worked well for me because I think something agitated comes out in my personality that doesn't help with the sales process. So I try to do a lot of homework on the front end and target well, where there's a high likelihood that it's going to work. You know what I mean? Like points of view, vision. Like I try to make sure the target is a fit before I actually fire. You know what I mean? Just because I've learned, I just get frustrated trying. Convincing is not. It doesn't work for me. I know you well enough to know it might not work for you because you might, put them in your dumb bucket. I kind of do that sometimes. So yeah, what I would say is really, really, but in those buckets where it is a fit, right? And it's going to shorten your universe. Your universe of investors is going to be more niche. Yes, I would spend more time there. I would focus, and I wouldn't, if the answer was no today, it might not be no next year. You know what I mean? There's several companies we've invested in that the first time they came through, it was really a not yet. It wasn't a no, and the next year we put money in, you know what I mean? Or 2 years later, in one case, we put money in. So, sometimes it's just a relationship thing, and the timing isn't quite right because you're not quite mature enough, but it doesn't mean that there's not a real mutual affinity and hope for business to be done. You know what I mean?
Have you ever had someone tell you, I'm sure you come up with a lot of ideas, and have you ever had someone tell you that that's too hard for you to do, or it doesn't make sense, and they don't think it's going to work? And you just did it anyway? Or?
Well, sometimes they were right. Sometimes they were wrong. I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to learn, and this is difficult, but you have to learn to process feedback for the most part in a data gathering, analytical, non-emotional way. You know what I mean? One person's perspective is one person's perspective. Now, that's different if you've got a real relationship with somebody, you know what I mean? And Yeah, and sometimes like they'll say that, but there's something behind there that's actually really valuable. You know what I'm saying? And so you shouldn't get put off by, because they may not be saying it's too difficult for you. They may be saying it's too difficult for anybody. And if they're saying that, okay, what they're saying is there is a challenge or a threat or weakness in your assertion that maybe you're not aware of, and maybe you're not. And so trying to get to that can only help you be more aware of what you're trying to do. But and look, this is not easy. It's easy for me to say because I'm 15 plus years on this side of the table. You know what I'm saying? Like basically from 2003, I got to by proxy for 4 years, and then from 2007 to 2019, I've been on the doing the impossible side of the table. I've been on the cash burning, trying to create value out of nothing side of the table so long. It's all I know. And I've had I've had way more losses than I've had wins, but I've had enough wins that I know it's not a fluke. You know what I'm saying? And so my confidence is stupid. But it wasn't that way. I remember in 2007 when I left and I had my first pitch with Sid Chambliss at Nashville Capital Network, and my idea was not venture backable, but I didn't know that. I had no guidance around that. I just went to go raise money from him. And he wasn't rude, but he was definitely like, I'm not giving you money, and I did not handle that well. You know what I'm saying? In the office I was fine, but afterwards, man, I cursed the shit out of him. You know what I'm saying? I guess just for where you guys are, this is InFlight. Yeah, so just from where you are in your journey, it's gonna hurt more. I get that, you know what I'm saying? But all I would say is just try to remove some of that from it, and try to be analytical in processing that stuff and get some value out of it. Try not, the chip on your shoulder does help sometimes, but there's a point of diminishing returns on the chip. You know what I'm saying? And I just would, yeah, it's a balance. There's no, you know what I'm saying? It's not black and white. There's a balance on that.
So I feel like you're kind of mentioning this with social content, you just start doing, and it feels like you can fall into that trap of constantly just doing things and not taking a step back and being strategic or allowing people to speak into what they're seeing in your business. You kind of mentioned that too with your mistake of getting so far into it with that one company. You didn't see that you were so reliant on these constructs. What are some tactical ways that you built people in your life or meetings in your life where you're taking that pause to say, okay, what's really going on with our business? What should we be doing? What are we not focusing on that we should be? Do you have an advisor that's outside of your industry that you meet with? What do you recommend for that?
I'm not great at that. Okay. I'm not great at that. Yes, I've made big mistakes, but I don't know that I would have changed anything. And I guess part of the reason is that nothing was fatal. And, those really, really big mistakes are like stripes. You know what I mean? It's it's different than somebody telling you something. It's in martial arts, when you're learning moves, you watch it, right? But then they'll make you get in the position to feel the pain, because you learn differently when you actually feel the pain, right? So it's the difference between academic learning and learning by doing. And so I guess what I'm saying is the losses, nobody gives a shit about them. You know what I mean? And they're my L's anyway, and I'm totally Like, they're chapters in my book. They're awesome. They're mine. I went through that. So I know never letting that happen again. But I don't know. I sort of have a bias for doing. I'm just, I guess it's not a perfect strategy, but I think I see more people overthink stuff. You know what I'm saying? And don't do shit. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like I'm 43 years old. Like, I have 2 more lives, maybe 3, to live. I've only lived one Nashville life. Haven't even been here 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So, like, lost a ton of money. Credit's gotten totally screwed up. Got divorced. Lost 2-3 companies. Really bad partnerships. Like, just a ton of really bad stuff. But, like, I'm okay. Like, I'm still here. I'm fine. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, everyone has to do things differently. You know what I'm saying? Like, I started this answer by saying I'm not good at that, right? Yeah, I'm not good at that. So I don't know if you want to listen, take my answer as what you should do. But, like, it's my answer, right? It's my answer. I like to learn by doing. I like the experience that I get by actually experiencing things. You know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting. So I just had a conversation with CEO of a public multi-billion-dollar healthcare company, and it's an hour-long conversation, really great conversation, and at the end, now that he's like sort of into it, like he brings up what he should have brought up in the beginning, which is, but you're only 120 days into this. It's kind of early, And I was like, dude, like, I do what I want to do. And that was the end of that conversation. That was the end of it. It's like I'm an owner of a professional sports team. I'm a college dropout. I taught myself how to code. I do whatever I want to do. I get access to whoever I want to get access to. It's the end of the story. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just didn't flinch. I wouldn't have done that 10 years ago, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, because I've been through all that stuff, like, I'm just not scared anymore. You know what I mean? Nothing killed me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It didn't feel all that great, but it didn't kill me. And I'm smarter, and I'm not going to go do the same dumb thing again. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I do think there's a psychological, emotional part of this journey that you guys are on. You know what I mean? Like, you do really have to get this sense of your own superhero-ness, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, you really do, because make no mistake, like, this is like some of the hardest stuff anyone can do. Just be an entrepreneur, and like, this is so freaking hard. It's so hard. It's doable. You'll see examples all around you of people who have done it. And so if they can do it, you can do it. But make no mistake, the delta between being an entrepreneur and being like everyone else in the world who goes to their job, I mean, the depth of experiences you will have that people who don't do this will never have. It's just, I don't even know how to explain it. It's, you know what it's like? Actually, here's what it's like. It's like being a little piece of shit teenager, being terrible to your parents, and then you have a kid. And you're like, I get it. I get it. You're amazing. Thank you. Right? Now, for those of you who haven't gone through that, you're like, all of you who've been through it, you're like, oh, got it. Right? It's like that. It's like that. There's all sorts of things that, like, when I hadn't run a company of any substance, I'd be like, man, why doesn't Clint do shit this way? Now I was like, oh, maybe because it was fucking hard, or maybe because Clint did what the fuck Clint wanted to do. Like, you know, because it's his damn company, you know? And if everything goes down, guess who's got to deal with it? Not me. You're building a universe. You are, make no mistake, the center of that universe, you know? And you got to keep everything in orbit, you know? And you can't do that from a weak position. You really can't. You got to be strong, you know?
What do you think the entrepreneurial ecosystem needs here to support, or I don't know if support's the right word, but just to grow more successful entrepreneurs in Nashville?
So ecosystems generally work when the powerful institutions are really committed. And that's still not fully true here. Still not fully true, you know. They're committed to things, but they're not fully committed to the entrepreneurial ecosystem here. So, you know, that's something. But, you know, it is interesting, right? Like, I feel like there's something weird and generational about that. It's like 50 years ago, like if you go back and you look at the story of HCA, you know, it started a little over 50 years ago, like it's super entrepreneurial. You know what I mean? Like the model didn't exist, and like Tommy First was an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of like a rabble-rouser, you know, rebel, like didn't really fit in with existing things, was like, you know, breaking existing models. And, you know, the success of that has built a model where the majority of the CEOs are coming from the finance division. You know what I'm saying? They're all too often CFOs. You know what I'm saying? They're really risk managers. You know what I'm saying? But that's how the business has evolved. It's evolved to be about operational excellence and risk management. You know, now it's this billion-dollar thing, and that thread, that cultural thread of entrepreneurship, you know, sort of got lost. You know, and I think these leaders, like if you talk to them, I think they'd admit that. They'd say, you know, no, we're not that entrepreneurial. You know what I'm saying? Like we're an institution at this point. You know, and so you know, look, I mean, you have people like Clint, you know, who have had success and then, you know, reinvest their time. I mean, you know, we're certainly doing a lot better than a lot of other ecosystems, but I know what you're asking, and my answer is, you know, we don't have the level of lean-in commitment to innovation and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I can say that because it's measurably different from other ecosystems, right? Where different level investments have been made that it's just, it just is, right? So, you know, you just gotta work with that. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta work with that. I mean, I've come to just, you know, but I would say it's interesting, right? I mean, I think back to the point about the content piece, right? You don't have to be limited to Nashville. You really don't have to. You know, the world is small, and this is what makes it small. And how do you build beyond the limitations of this geography? You can. You know what I mean? If you focus on that and you really commit to that, you know. But you can't really do that until you can like accept that, you know, like for a while, I was all hung up on the Nashville ecosystem thing, and so it was like I wasn't really focused on that because I was focused on what I could do to try to advance the Nashville ecosystem thing. And I think I've put my time in on that front, so like, you know, you won't find me doing a whole lot of that these days. But literally, I did put my time in, like, so I don't feel like I'm not like I didn't I didn't believe in it, or I don't believe in it long term, but just in terms of my life and what I'm doing, I'm focused on the globe now. And so that's what I'm doing, because Nashville's got limits for me too. Like real limits. Real limits. I get it,
How often do you guys go back and review and kind of look at when you're on all these platforms and your content, and probably hates me saying content every 5 minutes, but I thoroughly believe the same way. You've got a YouTube channel, make sure you're on all these platforms, but I think in our stage it's a little overwhelming sometimes of going, where is my time best allocated at this space if we don't have a team kind of helping us in the back end, and then going and reviewing and say, hey, we're killing it here, we're not doing so well here, but do we pivot on that and move here a little bit more, spend more time here? How do we allocate those resources a little bit? And also that piece of like keeping up on the latest trends and how to grow those platforms, right? I'm hearing terms now about Instagram that have been out for 5 years that now most people are doing. And so you're like, great, how do we stay up on front of that so that we're having those good conversations? Say, now that this is the new thing, normal consumers probably don't even realize what's happening. They're like, how do we make sure we stay in front of that, but then maximize on each platform?
Yeah, so I actually have an answer for you that I hope you'll find really practical because I actually think this is a super valid question, right? So first and foremost, you have to keep the lights on, okay? First and foremost. So you have to design an operating model that's going to keep the lights on. When I'm talking about like doing all these different things, right? That is something I'm encouraging you to do as a long-term brand building, capacity building exercise that I think will differentiate you and is a mid to long-term investment, but I don't know that it's going to drive a check in the door in the next 30 days, right? And so what I'm saying is you have to figure out what that balance looks like, but on the brand building side, what I would say is don't overanalyze, build capacity and build muscle for production, right? Because what you'll find very quickly is that forget about like the knowledge of things, it's the psych game. The reality is the reason why you don't do this is because you're afraid to do it. Not you, all of us are really afraid to put ourselves out there like that all the time. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's really what's going on here. And so what I would say is don't analyze this. Right? And let's just say this is 10 to 15% of your energy, okay? Because I want to encourage you to do this because I think you need to build brand, but brand is a mid to long-term investment. It's not a, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a mid to long-term investment, right? You need to figure out in the macro how much of your overall time you're going to put into like keeping the lights on, running things as is. And that stuff you have to watch more closely. You know what I'm saying? If you're doing, direct response advertising or marketing or any of that, yeah, you need to look at open rates, click rates, show rates, unsubscriber, all that stuff. You need to look at that because it impacts your financial model. I would say this stuff, don't even put this stuff in your model. Does that make sense? Don't even put it in your model. But just build capacity to build brand on this thing that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do 10 years ago. That's what I'm saying. Was that helpful?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I really care about that question.
I appreciate it. Like we need content all day, every day, post it wherever. I'll figure out where to best make use of the resources we have.
Yes.
Right? And it's like more, but there's no strategy really at this point. But just get it out there and then let's see what happens, kind of thing. But just with a team, I didn't know if you guys spent time saying, hey, like, did you see what these people are doing? That's kind of new and engaging with audience and bring let's maybe explore that a little more.
I am, but here's what I'll say. I'm putting out a minute. So I've given myself sort of really basic quotas, right? 1 podcast episode a week, 1 newsletter a week, and then derivative content, from those things. I just doing that, I don't have, and then engaging with people as they respond, right? Which comes in people coming up to me and saying, hey man, I really liked your newsletter, or an email that comes in, or a comment, or a DM, or whatever. Beyond that, I literally don't have capacity to look at the analytics. So I've been doing it from the beginning of the year. I can't even tell you how it's performing. I don't even know. But here's what I do know. It's making an impact on people. I know, because they're telling me, right? So I'm creating value. And that's actually all I give a shit about. It's creating value, which is going to build brand, which is going to give me leverage later on at some unknown time when I need it. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'll have it when I need it.
How do you, I guess it's two questions. So I have a lot of, my brain works a lot like yours, where it's just like do, and then it's, how do you create kind of boundaries with yourself in terms of like, okay, this is actually the things I need to be concentrating on. And then also, I assume you get approached all the time for, meetings and people wanting to like pick your brain and all that stuff like that. So, how do you, do you have like a time management?
I do.
Like a list of things you're going to do for the day, for the week, and kind of another part of that is how do you structure your team meetings? Like, is it sort of like a scrum, like, hey, we're standing and doing all this very quickly, or do you kind of get into the weeds on stuff and delegate, or kind of like how does your, I also have more things that I want to do than I can do in a day, so kind of how does your brain work with like the go, and also here's how I'm going to delegate, and here's how I'm going to prioritize my own time and boundaries.
Yep. Okay, so the answer, you asked a bunch of questions, but they all sort of stem from one really, really important thing, right? Which is how do you create structure so that you best harness the most important resource you have, which is you? That's really what you're asking, right? Okay, so it's just that. You create structure. That's it, right? Now, here's where people screw up. They don't create structure. They don't do it. Like, seriously. Like, so basic stuff. So, for example, if you look at my website right now, I've got the section called Passions, right? And instead of like over analyzing and being like, oh, I want to be the businessy tech guy, but oh, how does the healthcare stuff fit in there? Well, but how does the soccer stuff? I just listed all the shit I really care about. And guess what? It's not that big a list. You know what I'm saying? I care about well-being. I like soccer, like martial arts, like technology and innovation, healthcare. It's like 5 things. Okay, so I got 5 topics. There are my 5 topics. There they are. Okay, on LinkedIn, I'm going to talk about this. On Insta, I'm going to talk about this. On Twitter, I'm going to talk about whatever the fuck I want. On my email, I'm going to be really personal. Boom, right? Just create structure, right? Your time, the same thing. So I'm going to send you draft of my book. I've got a chapter that talks about this, about like how to do all this, but time budget. Like literally in Google Calendar, I have, you know how you can create multiple calendars in Google Calendar, right? Okay, create one called time budget and build your ideal day. And then your ideal week, right? Do it. And then force your life into it. And you'll have 80 to 85% success, but that's way better than what you're doing now. Way better than what you're doing now, right? Which is, everything comes, I just do everything, and then I'm like, so Thursday mornings from like 9 to 11 is when I can have sort of open, inbound, random meetings that don't actually meet any real agenda for me, and they're 30 minutes apiece. That's it. So when, Jennifer emails me and says, I love your content, it's awesome, like, I would love to, sit down and pick your brain for 30 minutes. I want to do that, but I only do that on Thursday mornings from 9 to 11, and if my next slot is September, that's when it's going to happen. No. Do you see what I'm saying though? So, and then that gets back to being okay with holding your line and saying no. Because if you don't hold your line on stuff, and I know you understand this, if you don't hold your line on your own stuff that you set for yourself, you're gonna let everyone else walk all over you, right? So like you build just being okay with saying no, because you know you're doing it for like the right reasons. You're not being mean. You're doing it to uphold the structure. It's not personal at all. It just so happens what this person wants you to do doesn't line up with the plan, and that, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, I like that. Thank you. And so, have you also like built that? It's dynamic, I assume, where you like build your ideal week and then you're like, well, that was a total fucking waste.
Yeah, everything is dynamic, but it's not dynamic like week to week, where like it's actually just doing work, but that has no teeth in it. You know what I'm saying? It's more like over the course of 6 months, I learned, I don't love this part of it. Or something's changed in my life and I want to pick up an extra workout. So, I'm going to advance the ball a little bit there. You know what I'm saying? Like one of the biggest things that it's helped me do is when I'm not injured, work out 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, which has been massive for everything else, right? You know what I'm saying? But like I wouldn't do that if I didn't have the time budget in place. Another thing that's a resource thing, right? That's a resource thing, but a lot of people don't think about this is, one of the best investments you can make is in a virtual assistant who manages your calendar. I use somebody who I've found online and have been using for the last 3.5 years, right? But there's lots of different systems. My system with this person works really well, but they have access to my time budget, so they know how I think, and they know what I want in terms of booking. And then we have a little code in the emails. I'm going to tell you the code, so if you see this, then you'll know where you fit. But like, I'll just, I'll say, oh, thanks, great. And I'll loop this person in and I'll say, Stephanie, please help us find a time to get together. If I put 1 star, it's a 15-minute call. If I put 2 stars, it's a 30-minute call. If I put 3 stars, it's a 30-minute meeting. If I put 4 stars, it's a 1-hour meeting. The person never sees. That explains everything. Stephanie then proceeds to tell this person, this is what Marcus has available, and I don't have to deal with that, right? So there are certain things that I know are just uncomfortable for me, and I just delegate that away, right? And it just makes my life easier, but I still get the job done that I want. Protecting your time is, look, it's everything. You know what I'm saying? How you manage your time. And then the other thing I would say is, how do I get to a time budget? I work on the weekends. You know what I'm saying? I spend my Sunday working on my time budget instead of going to Topgolf. But I like that, by the way. I like to work. So working on the weekends is actually just fine and fun for me. And in fact, I'm super charged up on a Monday if I feel like I've really put myself in a position that week to be super productive on Sunday. I don't need to hang out with people like that. I mean, Annie, you've seen me. Like I'm not even like that. I just and the older I've gotten, the more I've just realized I just don't like. I like work. I like work. I like being productive. I like being successful. I like creating value. It makes me happy, and that's why this is a great life for me. It's a great life for me.
Do you have time to relax?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's not totally sustainable, but I can go for many, many weekends in a row working and be like, cool. And then eventually it's like, nah, this is getting old. I need, but I plan those in at least once a quarter, 4-day weekend. Just plan it in. Don't let anything get in the way of it. A lot of this is self-awareness, right? You know what I'm saying? You learn yourself, and then you design for yourself, and you take care of yourself. So much of this is taking care of yourself. So much of this is taking care of yourself. Nobody else is going to take care of you. It's your job. You don't get to complain about it as an entrepreneur. It's yet another thing you have to do. Just do it, right? But no, if you don't take care of yourself, you're gonna screw up. Like you're going to lose something. if you don't take care of yourself. Just full stop. So like, you have to do that. Yeah.
When did you get Stephanie involved in the process in the way that you felt helped you level up this aspect of your entrepreneur game?
It was the point where I knew I needed to manage my calendar, but I wasn't terribly good at holding the line. And I knew it would be better if I had somebody else do that job for me. You know, like some people say they like it because it seems prestigious, like to have somebody else manage a calendar. For me, it was not that. I actually really liked managing my calendar because I'm a control freak in that respect. But I learned how to build a system that still allowed me to maintain control, but then not have to do the ugly part of the job, which was telling somebody I couldn't meet with them until September. I got to present it to someone else. So it was just a realization. It's just, you know, I think that's another thing is like, the reason why I don't do a whole lot of meetings with advisors and stuff is because I do spend a fair amount of time self-assessing, you know, and trying to be honest with myself about like where I'm falling short and where I'm not leaning into my strengths, and how do I get out of that bucket? You know what I mean? How do I not do things that are not my best and highest good? You know, because I'm great if I'm doing what I'm great at, but like I'm good if I'm doing things I'm not great at, but I'm also deleting time I could be spending being great, and so it's a double negative. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Sometimes out of necessity, you're an entrepreneur and there's no one else to do the thing, and so you have to do it, right? But like as soon as you can stop doing that thing, stop doing it. You know what I mean?
So it's 12:45, so do you have any final things you want to say? Otherwise, do y'all have any other questions? But perhaps just stick around for 2 minutes.
No, I just thanks and good luck. You know, I think entrepreneurship is a great life, but it's also not easy. I get that. But you know, I love autonomy. I love authority. I love agency in my life, and I do think entrepreneurship gives you all those things. And I love reality, and I think entrepreneurship is like a crash course in reality. You know what I'm saying? Like the market doesn't lie. And so, you know, I think for all those reasons, like this is, you know, you've chosen a great life, and, you know, just know like it's going to develop you and make you into, you know, a more full expression of who you already are, which is already great, but like, you know, it's going to pull all the greatness out of you. You know what I mean? So just lean into it and take care of yourself.